Hello and welcome to the One Time Podcast. My name is Miriam and I'm the host here. In this podcast, I and my guests talk about productivity and time management, how we can live with our energy instead of against it and get things done with more ease, more fun, and without burning out. For today's episode, I spoke to Martine. Martine is a coach and trainer, also for time management and productivity, and I always love speaking to someone who does something similar to me. And today we speak about time management versus self-management, if you like, because Martine and I, we both agree that there is no such thing as time management because there's 24 hours and that's always, going to be like that, no matter how hard we try. Bending time. So all we can manage is our energy and our focus, and she calls that self-management. Yeah, if you feel like you never have enough time, then maybe this episode is for you to give you another angle on that. And then I wish you, a lot of fun listening to this episode and hear you on the other side.
My name is Martine Ellis. I'm a trainer, consultant, and coach. And the thing I care most about, and the thing I hope we're going to talk about in our chat today, is this idea of sustainable productivity. The idea that to do your very best work or to live your very best life, you need to be prioritizing your needs, your health, your well-being. And that, sometimes some people find that really uncomfortable to hear, the idea that you've got to put yourself first. But of course, if you don't put yourself first, then you can't be anything to anybody else. So, that's what I care about a great deal. I help people and organizations work in healthy, sustainable ways. And I do that through various means. I'm a trainer. I mentioned I'm a coach as well. So I go into organizations and I train their staff. I coach individuals, whether sort of in their professional capacity or their personal capacity. And I'm also a bit of a doodler. You might have seen some of my doodles online. I like to get my point across in a kind of short, sharp, visual way quite often. So that's a fairly new thing for me. But in terms of content, I like to doodle, occasionally record a few podcasts, occasionally. And I want to help people perform at their best. That's what I care about, but doing it in that healthy, sustainable way. So that's me.
How did you get to that topic?
How did I get here? Yeah. So my sort of professional background is in education. At least for the last sort of 15 years or so. Prior to that, I did a decade in finance. For context, I'm based in Guernsey, and I was born in Guernsey in the Channel Islands, and finance is our sort of main industry over here. So I kind of, I left school and fell into finance. Quite often, that's what you do in Guernsey. And I did a decade. I'm very close to giving my age away. I'm very much noticing this as well. So I did a decade in finance. And I did really well. Sort of before the age of 30, I was a senior leader. I was on the board of directors of an international trust company. And, to all intents and purposes, I was doing incredibly well. But I had that, I'm 30. What am I doing? I really felt I was kind of golden handcuffed to my job, because I was earning a great salary and I had a mortgage to pay. I was driving a convertible. It felt like this was all I could do now. And it wasn't quite sitting right for me. One of my core values is service. I like helping people. So I did what anyone in that position would do, and I decided to leave the finance sector and become an unqualified teacher, or a lecturer specifically. I took a 1-year maternity cover at our local further education college, and that year turned into 15 years. So I qualified on the job because like I said, I was unqualified. And then I worked my way up the education ladder. This is relevant to the sustainable productivity stuff because during that first year of teaching, the change from finance, sort of where I was boss effectively, to trainee was so significantly different and dramatic. And it was a huge upheaval for me. And I got really burnt out. And it was in that year where I sussed out, I love this. I love teaching people. I love helping people. But if I'm going to do it, I've got to do it differently. So that's where everything kind of grew from. So I did 15 years in that kind of traditional education setting. And now I left about 2 years ago, for context. I left that traditional setting 2 years ago. Now I work part-time for a charity, leading education for them. And I also work for myself part-time, which was the coaching and training that I mentioned to you. So that's kind of kind of how I got here. I was saying earlier that I like to do things in a concise way, and now I've just taken a long time to explain myself.
No, that's perfectly fine. It's good to have context and for people to relate. The sustainability part is also what resonates with me. That is also how I got into time management, because I'm from the sustainability sector. And I felt like we were preaching sustainability. I was preaching sustainability, right? Planetary boundaries and resource use, right?
Yes.
And I was like, but how about my resources?
Yes.
Like living the talk in a different way. Like, yes, taking the train instead of flying, but working longer than I should is pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
I'm also not renewable in that sense.
I love that. Because actually, when I talk about sustainable productivity, I know a couple of people will go, wait, you're talking about the environmental context. And normally I kind of correct them. But actually, you're absolutely right. Sustainable means sustainable regardless of the context.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is where the word originates from, as far as I know, from the environmental context. But as I also believe, it can be applied to many other areas.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you for your introduction and for giving us insights into your life and your work. You mentioned at the start that we cannot really manage time. It's a fixed quantity. It's a fixed amount we get every day. And that instead that we can, that it's more helpful to focus on the self-management part, like me in context with time and in contact with time. Could you explain that a bit more, what that means to you?
Definitely. So in that first year of teaching, I got really heavily into time management content. So I read all the books, read everything from David Allen to Cal Newport to just the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Work Week. I'm really mindful there's a lot of men there's not enough women talking about productivity.
That's true.
There's a lot of white men. That is another conversation for another time, perhaps. But I became quite nerdy about productivity books and podcasts and YouTube and that sort of thing. And it was fascinating. And I tried absolutely everything. But one thing, perhaps with the exception of Cal Newport, one thing that I noticed people weren't really focusing on was the idea of self-management. And it's kind of got me to the stage where I now, in quite a spiky way, will say to people, there is no such thing as time management. There isn't. It doesn't exist. Time is going to pass regardless of what we do. It is going to pass at the same rate, while it might feel in some activities that it's passing a bit more quickly and in others more slowly. Time is just going to pass and you can't manage that. The thing that you can manage, the thing that you have agency over is yourself, your behaviors, how you do things. So therefore, I really strongly believe that now, that all the time management strategies under the sun are useful in the sense that they help you conceptualize stuff and maybe look at things through a different lens. But ultimately, you've got to start with you. You've got to start with who you are, what your life looks like, what your needs are. I think needs are a really, really interesting angle for all of this. I'm thinking energetic needs, where you get your energy, whether you're a morning person, an evening person, that sort of thing. But also there's a neurodiversity or neurodivergence angle here. If you're neurodivergent, you have to think about the fact that your brain might work differently to the person writing the productivity book, right? So starting with you is absolutely key. I don't know what your experience of that perspective is, Miriam.
Yeah, I think it's similar. I also felt like the tips felt useful and they should work in theory. Right?
Yeah.
They sound so logical.
Yes.
But then I'm here being a human being and I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm tired, I'm triggered, I'm a lot of other things. So yes, I can set the Pomodoro timer, but if my mind isn't in the right place, then it's not going to do anything for me. So
absolutely.
That is something.
The way these books are written and these videos and these TikToks are often portrayed is this is the only solution and it will work for everybody. And that's not right.
No.
There is no one size fits all. It all starts with where you are in any given moment, because what you're describing, that's you, but not necessarily on the same. You're not the same every single day. It's about the week that you've had, the conditions you're in. So yeah, 100% agree.
And then when you get in conversations with people, where do you get them started, or what do you recommend them to start with when they're starting first with themselves, and then the time management comes on top, or if we call it time management for practical reasons?
We kind of have to call it that because let's call it time management when we know the truth deep down. But so starting with you, who are you? What do you need? What does your week look like? What does your day look like? What are the things competing for your attention? It's all about doing that kind of self-audit. There are a few places where I like to start with people, and one that I'll share with you now, which is, if anyone's ever worked with me or been to one of my training sessions, they'll hear me saying this quite a lot. So I have said there's no one size fits all, but I have to say this one's pretty solid. And that is the idea of controlling the controllables. That one for me is a really important place to start when you're looking at yourself and what your life is like and what's going to work for you in terms of getting things done and living that good life. What can you control and what can't you control? Because I think a lot of us feel that we have no control over all the stuff going on in our professional lives. And yet there are so many more things we can control that we don't realize, like, what the meetings that we say yes or no to, where we start on our to-do list, how we schedule our day. I think we all have so much more autonomy than we think we do. So that, as well as that looking inward bit, quite often conversation will start broadly around that idea: control the controllables. What's in your control? What isn't? What do you have agency over?
And then how do you help people realize that they have more control than they actually have? Or how can they be guided to addressing the things that they cannot control in a different way? So that, again, back to self-management, that it feels more, like less exposed and less like passive acceptance.
I mean, it's a tricky one because it will depend on the individual. But if I think say I was coaching somebody and they came to me just overwhelmed in their professional role because their calendar was just back-to-back meetings, and this is a really common challenge that I face with my clients, that they have back-to-back meetings. So say they work roughly 9 to 5, often a lot longer than that. They're absolutely jam-packed with meetings the entire day and do not have any other time other than, say, 2 hours on a Friday, maybe, to do the rest of their job. And invariably, when you're in meetings, there's actions that come out of those meetings that you have to do at some point. If there aren't actions coming out of a meeting, then that meeting should never have happened. That does need to be a meeting. But that's like a really common thing that clients might bring to me is back-to-back meetings. So my role in that scenario is to start helping them look at the meetings and go, which ones do you really have to be at? Which ones are you adding value to? And which ones can you find a different way to get the information? So, it could be that there's a conversation with the person's manager about working out what they can and can't attend. Are they able to look at recordings and get a transcript and perhaps use AI to summarize what's going on in the meeting and see whether there's any actions? Can they submit reports to the media? Just getting super practical about, because that's a really clear case of needing to make some space and realizing what you can say no to. That's just one example, but you can say no to so much more than you think you can and still retain that professional, getting the work done that you need to do type demeanor. I think that another way that I often explore with people I work with is you can, quite a lot of these conversations feel a bit spiky and a bit uncomfortable for people, but you can adjust your standards in certain pieces of work that you do, lower them slightly, and nobody will notice. And this is speaking to perfectionism, right? Quite a lot of people who are feeling overwhelmed, particularly in a professional context, are closet perfectionists. I know, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I completely get it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying do sloppy work, not at all. But it is working out which projects need deep work and really high level energy from you and the best possible work you can do, and which jobs can be like a B plus, as a B plus work is okay for the vast majority of stuff that you do. So it's making a judgment on where you place your energy, because ultimately, it comes down to us having limited energy and limited time. There are only so many hours in the day, and there's only so much energy, so much fuel in your tank. So you get to decide where you put that.
So it's auditing both. What do I really need to say yes to? Is there more efficient ways that I can deal the things that I cannot say no to? And for the things that I say yes to and need to do, what level of, I don't know, perfection or detail do they really need?
Yes.
And can I roughly, I don't know, in A and B, just, okay, this is really deep work and this is like, as you say, the B plus.
Yes.
Right? If there was these two categories.
I'm a big fan also of, it's a lot easier to ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes. Yeah. I don't know if that's an age and experience thing, but quite often I'm certainly at a point in my life where I will take a risk with certain things and take that approach of, I'm just going to say no to this and deal with the consequences later type thing. And again, I'm not encouraging sloppy work. I'm encouraging just push yourself to be maybe a bit more assertive than you normally would be in terms of managing your boundaries. So, ask for forgiveness later rather than permission if something goes wrong, which invariably it doesn't. You don't actually have to ask for forgiveness because you've just asserted a boundary and it's just been accepted. I'm a big fan of Cal Newport's work, who I mentioned earlier, and I really enjoy his podcasts. And he often uses this idea that when we're in the workplace, we often have this really bizarre idea that there is some sort of department of people just keeping an eye on how you use your time and where you send emails and whether or not you do certain things, and that you're constantly under surveillance. And he kind of paints this really interesting picture of how we sort of feel that. And we're really not under the surveillance that we think we are. So therefore, you do have more autonomy than you think. And I just think that's a really good visual.
Yeah. I certainly felt like that during COVID. I thought we used Team most of the time. And then there was this little color code. I don't know if you know it, but it would go yellow as soon as you were, 5 minutes away from the computer or not even moving the mouse. Like you were just reading something, so nothing was moving. And then this little color would turn yellow.
Awful.
And at one point I was like, okay, I'm just going to switch off Teams. It's making me anxious, and no one noticed, and no one cares.
No, nobody cares. Absolutely nobody cares. Nobody's like, where's Miriam? I haven't seen her on Teams in the background.
Exactly.
Just nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. But I really had this voice in my head telling me that my supervisor or someone was looking at his screen as if he had nothing better to do.
Exactly that. And it really is a bit of a reality check, isn't it? When you start thinking, nobody's watching me, and the sort of people who will be listening to your podcast and watching these clips, they are going to be at a point in their career where absolutely nobody is watching them. They're trusted. They are trusted individuals. They're trusted professionals.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I think it's definitely questioning the own stories that we have. That is also something that I like to talk about. What are the stories we tell ourselves about work, time, stress, and all of these things? And is this really true? Or is it what I want to believe?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting thing to dig into, the stories we tell ourselves. I think there may be something here that's linked with sustainable productivity and time management. The story we tell ourselves of what success looks like. I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, because for a lot of people, they tell themselves a story that success looks like grinding and grafting and being late in the office and making sure that your Teams icon is green all the time. That is what a successful person looks like. And I quite often get people to really think about what success really means for them, because that's not success for me. Success is far more about being an authority in my subject area and being able to help people in a meaningful way, not necessarily doing that 8 hours a day. If I can do that in a shorter space of time, then I'm going to want to do that. That's what success is for me, because my health and my life outside of that professional context is incredibly important.
Yeah, or I feel questioning as you say, the own definition of success. Was also something that I got into. Also in a leadership course that I took, that was also, okay, what is the society's cultural success?
Yes.
And is this what I also want for my life? Then fine.
Yes, absolutely.
But if it's not, then I'm going to be there and I'm just going to not feel good.
100%. And that goes back to this idea of starting with the self, doesn't it? Because if you start with you and what success looks like for you, because, you know, as someone else, it's going to be completely different, and that is okay. But I like what you said about what society's perception of success is versus yours, versus maybe your family, your partner, those sorts of things. That's a really interesting thought experiment, isn't it?
Yes. And I think that then also changes our perception on control, I guess, because then it's also about what do I actually want to control? Because if my perception of success changes, then I might realize that something that I wish to control, I don't wish to control anymore, because I realized, I don't need to control this because it's actually not part of my success story.
Yeah, definitely. There's something here, isn't there, about defining your success story and also being okay with the fact that it changes over time. Because what I thought about as success when I was 25, maybe 28, was so different to what it is now at 47. Like, it is so different.
Yeah.
And that's good. We should evolve. We should evolve. But we need to make sure that all of the systems and approaches to work and play that we put around ourselves match that.
Is there something that you tell people how to get closer to their own success story? Anything that you use to guide them towards that? Because I think confronted with that question, it might not be really easy. Like, that's my success story. I think it actually takes a bit of more going deeper and grinding a bit more.
It does. It's not something that I would expect somebody just to be able to say. I think there are a few approaches to working out what you want your life and work to look like. I think the ideal day activity is quite a nice one, to think really hard about what an ideal day would look like for you and describe that. And I keep that question quite deliberately broad, because I'm not necessarily saying what is an ideal work day for you. I'm just saying an ideal day. Because if somebody describes something that isn't work, then there's a way to get to that, right? And it might involve work. And you can, when you start thinking about the perfect day or even the ideal weekend, or, you know, just what does that look like? And then work backwards to suss out how you get there. So it might be, what does it look like? How does it feel? What are you doing? Who's there? You know? So I think that's quite a nice kind of reflective exercise. I'm an ex-teacher, so everything's about reflection. That's all we do. We just reflect all day long. But it is, I still journal now, and I'm still a trainer, so it's still a big part of what I do. But I think just that reflection is a nice place to start. Yeah,
I do it too. And as you say, it's not like a do it once exercise. It changes, and it's again and again exercise.
It is, and I think you have to give yourself that gift of space. I mean, you know, I'm really mindful. I'm in a position of privilege here in that I can give myself the gift of that space. Like, for example, I've got to make some decisions soon about my employed role and my business and where I go next with things. It's kind of coming up to a bit of a milestone point where I need to suss out what happens next. If I was a company of more than one, it would have been a team away day, but actually it was a away day on my own. And I didn't go away. I stayed on the island, but I live on a beautiful island. So I sort of gave myself, I called it a thinking day, and I came up with some prompts. And I had them on my phone, and I went out for a hike, no earphones or anything like that, no podcasts, nothing, and just gave myself some space to think. And then I went and sort of sat and had a really nice coffee and some breakfast and kind of typed everything up and just gave myself the gift of that space to reflect. Not everyone is that's a really privileged position I'm in, but thinking time and reflection time might be a 10-minute walk at lunchtime, and that's great. Do it.
Yeah. I also feel at the beginning, if it's just a couple of minutes every day, what happened yesterday? What do I want to happen tomorrow? It's just a couple of minutes.
Definitely. Give yourself that space. And journaling is great for, you know, those types of activities to really unpick where you want to be. I'm a big fan of journaling. Usually only a couple of sentences a day, but that is journaling as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, same. And then we also talked about something else before that we would like to discuss, that sometimes we get into being more productive and we get into being more efficient, and then other things creep in. And then suddenly the time that we just freed for ourselves and opened for ourselves just gets pegged again with things. How can we prevent that from happening? Like now I'm more productive. I get something done in 2 hours that before I needed 3, 4, and suddenly I could do more.
Yeah, I think I think people who get into time management and productivity can really easily get sucked into hustle culture. It's like, I'm into productivity. Okay, let's save as much time as possible so we can fill that time with more work. That is not what this is all about at all. The idea of working more efficiently and saving time is to make sure that you have got the time and space to do the rest and relaxation bit that you need to ensure that you carry on being efficient. So I'm a planner, and I really believe that very clearly planning your day, having a good system for managing your tasks, using time blocking where it's needed for you, living by your calendar. If it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist. That's really important for me and my brain and how I work. But being a planner doesn't mean I'm somebody who wants to cram 10 million things into my day.
Yeah.
When I schedule my week, I schedule rest and breaks. The priority. I'm not somebody who has boundless energy. I need to manage my energy really, really carefully. So those things have got to go in first. It's about prioritization ultimately. And where I think we go wrong in the scenario that you described is that whereas we had been prioritizing ourselves, we drop down the list. Suddenly we become a low priority, and the incoming work and activity is more important than us. And so it's about rejigging. So we are priority again so that we can meet the demands and be who we want to be.
Yeah, I also noticed that when I started working in more focused sessions following the Pomodoro or a little longer time switches, I also realized that I could really do a lot more. And then it was so tempting to still work the same amount of hours as I did before. But over a long period of time, it just doesn't work.
I think the thing to remember, you're absolutely right. When you use a strategy like the Pomodoro technique, which I'll explain in a minute, just in case anyone watching and listening isn't familiar with it, you cram more in to a shorter space of time. But the cognitive cost of that is higher. So you are more tired as a result. So there has to be a balancing act. There must be a balancing act. So it's such a good example. For those listening or watching that weren't familiar with the Pomodoro technique, the idea is that you work in short bursts of activity. So traditionally, 25 minutes of work where you've got rid of all of your distractions. So you put your phone in a drawer and you're in a good spot to get some proper work done. You work for 25 minutes. You have a 5-minute break where you can scroll TikTok and Instagram if you want to, or go for a walk, even better. So 5-minute break, and then you repeat. You repeat and you repeat. When you've had 4 sessions, you would then take a longer break. So that's the traditional Pomodoro technique. But it's properly flexible. And as you say, if you can do like a 45-minute block or an hour block, you just work with what works for you.
Exactly.
The idea is that you get into flow more easily because you've reduced the distractions. It's a great strategy, isn't it? I really like it.
Yeah, me too. It's one of my favorites. There's something that I tell people at my workshop: if you forget everything, don't forget this one.
Agree. And when I do sort of talks about this sort of thing, it is often the Pomodoro technique that people take away because it's such an easy to implement strategy. It doesn't require any technology, kitchen timer.
Anything.
That being said, there are a couple of apps that I really enjoy for the Pomodoro technique. Would you like me to tell you the ones I like?
Please.
It's always nice to have an app recommendation, isn't it? So Forest app is really good.
Okay.
It's a paid app. It's a few pounds, a few euros, but it's a one-off payment and it's worth every penny. So it locks your phone for each Pomodoro that you do, so you can't access your phone. And what it does is it grows a virtual tree on your phone lock screen. And so if you unlock your phone, you're going to kill that tree. I can't be killing trees.
No.
I just can't. So I really love that one. And then there's a new one, and I'm just looking at my phone now to get the name of it right. It is called Focus Friend, and it's very cute and cozy for anyone who likes that aesthetic. I very much do. Beautifully illustrated by a chap called Hank Green. And you've got this little bean that knits while you're doing your Pomodoro and knits socks and scarves and things. And if you interrupt your phone, it will not finish its socks and scarves.
Oh.
And then you can exchange those to help decorate the little Comedy Beans room. It's so cute. It's very cute. So those are my two favorite kind of gamified Pomodoro timers. But you can also use Pomofocus is a web-based timer that works equally well. So I like that one. That's free and available to all. And then there's one more that I'd recommend for if you want to do group Pomodoros. So say it's like a study session or something like that. If you were studying, it's called Cuckoo. So again, that's an online timer where you can do 25-minute or whatever time bursts of work. So maybe for remote teams, that one's quite useful too.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. I will share them also in the show notes so people can look them up easily.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. Nice. Yeah, getting back maybe to this time-saving paradox, right? There's also a theory behind that. And you would like to share a bit about that?
Jevons paradox. Yes, this is such a good one. So the idea of Jevons paradox is that when something becomes more efficient, we use it more, not less. So this paradox, it kind of came from the 19th century and it was applied to coal and steam engines. But I actually think it applies just as much to modern life because the more efficient you become, you have this desire to fill your time with stuff. Do you see what I mean? So you've become more efficient, but actually you're like, okay, so I've got all this space, I've got all this time. What shall I fill it with? Oh, I don't know, more work. That would be a great idea.
Yeah.
And we have to stop ourselves from doing that. Have you had that experience where you've become more efficient and you've sort of gone, ooh, I'll do more. I'll just take on more. Is that relatable?
Yeah, it's relatable on a personal level when it comes to work. And funnily enough, this also relates back to environmental studies because I once heard or read a paper about a washing machine company.
Yeah.
And they said that washing has become more efficient and more efficient and more efficient, but we spent the same amount of time on it since years and years and years and decades and decades and decades because we wash our clothes more because it's
of course
easier, right? Now we wear a shirt once and before we would wear it 3 or 5 times, whatever, right? So there's actually no time saving.
That's amazing. And that's, so relatable. I'm just thinking, there's only 2 of us in my household and I swear I have a load of washing on almost every day. And I'm like, yes, but I exercise. So it's just my workout gear. But you're absolutely right. Like back in the day, we would have worn things so much more before we even contemplated washing. Yeah, perfect example. Washing machines, time management, exactly the same, basically.
Yeah.
I think that the difference here is having that awareness of our tendency to go, oh, I've got spare time, I'll fill it with more work. At least if we are aware that that is a tendency that most of us have, we can stop ourselves. I think awareness is the starting point here. So yeah, such a good illustration. I love that.
Yeah, when I noticed that from my own work, I realized, okay, I need to have a plan for after so that I won't continue work. So I scheduled for myself, I'm going for a swim or something like that. So that I would kind of have to stop.
Yes,
at 4 or something.
I think that's a really good strategy. I don't have any issue with people like scheduling rest. It sounds awful when you say it out loud. Oh, I have to schedule some rest time. But actually, you'll honor it if it's in the calendar. And it's so important. And by doing the rest, if a swim is kind of a rest activity or a rejuvenation, isn't it? It's about topping your energy levels back up. It's important, so it goes in the calendar. It's a date with yourself. It's an appointment. It's a meeting. It's a really good strategy. I think it's important to schedule rest. I think the other thing to be aware of that is kind of broadly linked to this. And weirdly, I did a doodle about it only today. It's the idea that your to-do list is, the question I ask is it a to-do list or is it a wish list? We have a tendency to think we can do so much more in the time that we've got available than we actually can. So it becomes like, oh, I wish I could do all of this today.
Yeah.
But we can't. So being realistic and having cut-off points for your work and not expecting to be able to do 17 tasks, like 3 would probably be enough. So there's something there that's linked, I think, as well. This idea that is your to-do list actually a to-do list or is it a wish list? Because if it's a wish list, you're always going to be failing. You're always going to be going, oh, I didn't get everything off my list today. And that's not a nice place to be.
No, that's demotivating. Yeah, I really like that framing of, is it a wish list or is it a to-do list? I will borrow that from you.
Yeah, please do. And it didn't come from me, and I've seen it a couple of places, so unfortunately I can't cite my source accurately. But it's such a great idea, isn't it? Like to-do list, wish list, probably a wish list. And interestingly, I shared it on social media today. I shared it on LinkedIn, and one of my followers came back and said he likes to keep a list of things he's completed to show himself what he's achieved. So it kind of counterbalances that. Oh, I haven't got everything done today, but what have you done? You have achieved this. I quite like the idea. Rather than a to-do list, it'd be like a ta-da list. Ta-da, I've done this. So there's lots of different ways to slice and dice your task list, I think.
Yes, and make it like not like lying about oneself or like making it look better than it was. Because if we had priorities and then did a million other things, we're like, yeah, but I did all of this. Yeah, but was it important?
Good question. Yeah, was it important or just fun? Nothing wrong with doing fun things on a to-do list.
Yeah. I guess we need to find the balance between the two.
Definitely.
Good. So except for the two of us, is there any women in productivity that we can present?
Having that's such a good point. Having said that there is a lot of men in the productivity sphere, and there really is far too many. That's a very feminist perspective from me, but someone who is a really refreshing voice broadly in the productivity arena would be Anne-Laure Cunff. Are you familiar with her book Tiny Experiments?
I know the idea behind the book, but I haven't read the book myself. Yeah.
So Anne-Laure's work is fascinating. She's a neuroscientist, author, and she runs Ness Labs, which is an amazing resource. She writes about mindful productivity, but she goes far broader than productivity in the traditional sense. So I kind of feel a bit weird talking about her as pure productivity. It's much more. Her first book, as I mentioned, Tiny Experiments, is all about, rather than setting goals and kind of hustling towards your goals, what you do is you perform tiny experiments to explore how to make change and things like that. So there's definitely a productivity link, but she comes at it at a slightly different angle. And I think she's a really interesting thinker, and highly recommend the book. And I have to say, I've been a sort of annual review and goal setting person for the past, well over 5 years. At the end of every year, I do an annual review, which I think is a really important process, and set myself goals for the coming year. This time, I'm definitely doing, I will have some sort of goals, but I will also be conducting tiny experiments, just sort of exploring different potential changes and things. It's just a really different way of thinking, and I think her work's great.
I think I kind of do something similar when I plan out my months. I always set a habit for myself, or sometimes more, and then I just try to do them.
Yeah.
Like something that I do every day, which is maybe a bit similar. And then I try to see what effect does it have. Like I try to have, I don't know, I eat a banana every day after my first work unit or something. It's small things.
Yeah, no, but that is exactly exactly what a tiny experiment is. And thinking about the sort of people who are listening to your podcast, they're going to be researchers, right? A lot of them. So therefore, it's taking a scientific approach to change, personal change. So you're saying like, I'm going to do a tiny experiment where I eat a banana at the start of every day and make a note, like in your logbook or whatever, of how that makes me feel on a daily basis. And it's about that. And I think the big takeaway I had from reading the book and like kind of switching more to an experimental mindset rather than a very goal-driven mindset is there's no such thing as failing when you do it this way. Because if something doesn't go how you think it was going to, it's just data.
Yeah.
It's just information. And so therefore you say you set yourself a traditional goal and you didn't meet it. That feels bad. It feels really bad. But actually it's just data. There was a reason why you didn't meet that goal. What was the reason?
Yes.
Why? And exploring it. So it's a mindset shift, I think.
Yeah. I think that's also something that I try to, or the angle that I try to have on it. Okay, why didn't it work? Do I really want it to work? And what can I do? Or how can I change it so that
Yes.
I can still make it work. Also leaning towards atomic habits, but I mean, now this is from the habits angle in terms of experiments.
I think it's approaching things with curiosity, isn't it? Rather than like a sort of critical, harsh angle. It's a bit gentler, but actually, ultimately, the result is going to be more widespread when it goes right, I think.
Nice. Good.
I feel like we've addressed the gender balance.
Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm sort of really keen to leave your listeners and viewers with something kind of tangible to go away and think about. And so I think the big message from me is going back to the idea that there is no such thing as time management, only self-management. You can manage yourself. You can't effectively manage time. Therefore, the questions to ask yourself are around autonomy. And I genuinely believe we have so much more autonomy than we think we do in so many areas of our life. I think combine that with a reflection on the conditions that you need in order to thrive, and really digging in to who you are and what you need. And we talked about your success story. I think that's such a nice activity to do, to really kind of unpick that. And don't assume your success story or your definition of success from 10 years ago is the same as what it is today, because I guarantee it won't be. And then I guess the final phrase, control the controllables, my favorite. What is in your control? What isn't in your control? Focus on what you can control, put your energy there, and then let everything else go. Let it go.
Let it go. Yeah, thank you very much for your insights, and also for your really great summary. That was really, really nice too.
Thanks, Miriam. It's been really lovely chatting with you. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this episode at least as much as I did. I loved talking to Martine. I would have talked to her, I think, for a couple more hours because I thought it was really inspirational, her story, but also her take on time management and the way she works with her clients. If you like this episode, then let us know, or you can also criticize it. You can also let us know. Below the post of this episode on LinkedIn, you can reach out to us, all in the show notes. I also link the books that we talked about and the apps that Martine recommended, and a few more resources that might be interesting for you if you want to dive deeper. And then, yes, subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And then I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today. And then I wish you all the best. Take care and goodbye. Yours, Miriam.